Right. Folks may be traveling for. That's good. Well, then the six of us, we can just talk about the meaning of life together. So, well, I could wait. I know church let out a little late today. We can wait. We can just wait another minute. But
When is reunions weekend?
This week?
it was this weekend.
Yeah, okay, that's what, but are there aren't a lot of people here, are there?
Maybe they're coming this afternoon.
I know some of the people that I saw yesterday. Hey Doug, they said that they were going to come to the later service. So but I'm not sure.
I heard the
Maybe
fire.
sure.
We tried to see them because our trees.
Yeah.
It's that in.
Yes. We'll find out. I haven't done any of the other ones.
No, but it's a different book each year.
Hey, good morning.
Yeah. No, it's kind of nice to.
How are you? Good. What's wrong? Right. Sorry.
Okay, it's close enough.
Thank you. Right.
Thanks, how are you? All right, we'll see you at home.
There. How are you? I am, except I'm all the stuff is like things that you don't know. Okay, so wait, this is what I was gonna ask you.
Yes. I love the book. Oh, I
Okay, so did you, when are you giving your reports to your
So we'll get started in just a second. Does anybody want a paper Bible? Yeah, doesn't have one? Yeah? Happy to hand them out. Anybody else?
So what they have to make changes as to my Tuesday at some point. And I don't have to get I was like, well, I didn't, I want somebody to. Yeah. They should get rid of it. Okay, yeah. I mean, like, it's me, it's Leo. Yeah, yeah. It's all of us. Yeah. I know mine needs to be read too. Yes.
Oh, you're fine. Just come in. I'm just gonna shut the door.
Okay, well, welcome back to those of you who have been with us on this journey, going through these 5 books, these 5 great themes, and then welcome to anybody who's new. Glad you could be here with us today. Could we've done this every week. I really appreciate this. Could we just go around and just briefly, everybody just share their name? Maybe we'll start in the back. You two in the back. Yeah.
Carolyn Fisher.
Danielle.
Good.
Connie. Melissa.
Michael.
Michael.
Claudia. Teresa.
Right. Great. Yeah. Okay. Well, today we're in the book of Ecclesiastes, and we'll be talking about meaning or purpose as the major thing coming into that. And as I was just thinking about this week and the last couple of weeks, and just our themes here in these 5 books, I was just very grateful that in our Bibles, that we believe this is the word that God has given us as He reveals Himself and gives us a window into who we are and how we can relate to Him. That we have major themes like forgiveness, suffering, meaning, purpose, and then soon mercy or love and judgment, justice. Because this is the stuff of life, right? Like if the Bible couldn't address these things, I don't know why we would believe the Bible. But the Bible, it's God speaking to us about the very significant critical things of life. And so today we'll be looking at meaning and purpose out of Ecclesiastes. So I have some good slides. So the Ecclesiastes comes from a word that kind of means the assembly. So you can think of it as people gathering together to hear teaching from a teacher. We don't know who wrote it, but it's a book that's written in the style of addressing people in a classroom. So you can kind of imagine, that we're students in a classroom listening to this teacher, this instructor. The main character of the book is somebody called Koheleth. That's the Hebrew word, right? Often translated preacher, sometimes teacher, quester, questioner. I have my own take on how I envision this person who's teaching us today in our classroom. I call this person the dismantler. Somebody who's taking sort of all of our priorities, how we conceive of life, what we're chasing, what we're living for, and just dismantling all of that stuff. But it's not just like dismantling it for fun, just for the purpose of just tearing things down. It's dismantling things for a purpose, with the hope of building something better in its place. So I think a lot of people come into the book of Ecclesiastes and you start to hear the preacher, the teacher, the dismantler, and it's very disorienting. It's very disillusioning. But if you kind of hang on through the whole book, you get to the point where you see what the dismantler is trying to build in the place of tearing all this stuff down in our life. So we're students assembled in the dismantler's classroom. So here's a visual for you, for those of you like Fixer Upper, like Chip and Joanna Gaines, like that's what they do. They go into a home, they dismantle stuff, but it's not just to tear stuff down. It's always to build something better in its place, and this is what Koheleth is after. Okay, that's what this teacher is trying to do. That's the nature of the book. Maybe you in your life you've had a teacher or a coach, somebody, a mentor who has maybe lovingly told you, corrected you or exhorted you in a way, and you've become a better piano player for it, or a better student, or a better employee, because somebody has dismantled something in your life and sort of built something better in its place, right? Well, that's who Koheleth is, except times 100, okay? Thinking about Ecclesiastes falls in the category, the biblical category of wisdom literature, which includes Song of Songs, Proverbs, Job, the Psalms, and also now Ecclesiastes. Let me just give you an example of how the dismantler works. We'll just take the theme of integrity, okay? And if you were to approach the theme of integrity in the other wisdom literature, you have Proverbs 10:9. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, right? And we've lived that. When we are people of integrity, we can walk confidently knowing we're not going to be exposed, right? I heard a proverb one time, I think it's a French proverb. There's no pillow softer than a clean conscience. Right? And so we've sensed that in our life, but then whoever takes crooked paths will be found out, and we've also lived that side of the coin as well, where we've maybe spun something or hidden something or whatever, and so now we kind of walk in fear of being exposed. So if we're honest, we've lived out both sides of that problem in our life, right? But that's the way the world works. And that's kind of what Proverbs gives us. Then there's Psalm 26, vindicate me, O God, for I have walked in my integrity. So there's a prayer of somebody who has walked before God, lived as they meant to live, and they're crying out to God that God would vindicate them because they've been a person of integrity. That's Psalm 26. And then Job, we looked at last week. Job said, I have been a person of integrity, but I don't understand why all this stuff has happened in my life, and he really never fully understood why behind it. So it's Job couldn't walk securely because integrity doesn't always lead to places of abundance or beauty. Sometimes this world is a very broken and fallen place, and integrity doesn't guarantee anything. And so Job gives us that picture. And then Ecclesiastes, let's just hear what the preacher or the dismantler has to say about integrity in Ecclesiastes. Basically, like why be a person of integrity? Sure. A critical word or phrase, and we'll hear we're going to read chapter 1 in just a second. Is under the sun, like thinking about the reality of this world, like how does this world operate? Okay, could somebody read Ecclesiastes 2:12-16? This is like the nature of this world. Is anybody there?
I have it, it's NIV though.
Oh, that's totally fine.
Okay. And I turned my thoughts to consider wisdom and also madness and folly. What more can the king's successor do than what has already been done? I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. The wise man has eyes in his head, while the fool walks in the darkness. And I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. Then I thought in my heart, the fate of the fool will also overtake me also. What then do I gain by being wise? I said in my heart, this too is meaningless. For the wise man, like the fool, will not be long remembered. In days to come, both will be forgotten. Like the fool, the wise man too must die.
So comparing the wise and the foolish, and from the perspective of this world and the reality of this world, the wise and the foolish, they end up in the same place. There is no getting around that. They absolutely will end up in the same place. And so the dismantler is saying, do you recognize that? And both the wise and the foolish will eventually, the dismantler says this, they'll both be forgotten. They end up in the same place, and they'll both be forgotten at some point in future generations. And that is the reality of this world. And I'm going to give you a little parable in a second to really emphasize that. But can we just read one more, or maybe two more passages? Because somebody look at 1:15 and then also 9, 11, and 12.
Sure. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted.
Okay? What is crooked cannot be made straight. This world will remain crooked and broken. We cannot make it straight. And then 9, 11, and 12. Doug, are you there?
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Again, I saw that under the sun the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the intelligent, nor favor to those with knowledge, but time and chance happen to them all. For man does not know his time, like fish that are taken in an evil net, and like birds that are caught in a snare, so the children of man are snared at an evil time, when it suddenly falls upon them.
Right. Yeah. So there's this reality that we cannot change the world around us in a lasting way. It's just it's going to remain the same. So as we're having beginning to have our existential crisis together, thanks to this Vandler, I want to just take us even deeper in that and what this all means. I'll just give you this thought experiment of the great-great-grandfather. If you think, does anybody do like family lineage? Like you trace sort of your ancestors that going back. Okay, I see some of the heads nodding. If you go back 500, has anybody gone back as far as like 500 years? So, I mean, I think it's quite hard. Connie, yeah? Okay. Just think about, you have ancestors that go back that far, of course. Think about like your great-great-great-grandfather, some 500 years ago. And let's just say that this person was an absolute scoundrel, right? Stabbed people in the back, lived selfishly, didn't look out for anybody but himself. And just really did nothing to like sacrifice for anybody, love anybody, or whatever. But this person, whoever your ancestor is completely forgotten. Right? That's the reality of this world. And if you just sort of twist that and then you project it into the future, why are you a person of integrity? If in 500 years from now, I'll be forgotten, you'll be forgotten, just like your great-great-grandfather was forgotten. Why not be a scoundrel? Why be a person of integrity? And that's what the Dismantler does for the whole book. It just really presses us to ask the questions of like, why are we living the way we live? Why are we embracing these things? What is the purpose of life? What is the meaning of life? Why do we do what we do? And like that's why I said it's very disorienting and it's very difficult to hear. But there's a purpose, and we're going to get to the purpose at the end. You're not going to walk out of here in crisis, I hope. Okay. So it's human experience theology. It's looking at the way that the world is, the way that things are under the sun, and it's deriving understanding and wisdom and meaning out of that. But it takes a while. Okay. The starting point is human experience with the goal of pushing us to a directed endpoint. And we will get to the spoiler at the end. Okay? What I'd like to do with our, maybe the 20 or so minutes that we have is look at chapter 1 to get a little bit more sense of how the Dismantler does this. Where in the first half of chapter 1, the Dismantler says, life is short, it's elusive, and it's repetitive. And I want to ask the questions as we go through this. How does this resonate with your experience? Because that's how the book works. It's taking our experience and it's showing us that, well, yeah, that is the way that life is like. I get that. And it's then pushing us to the end that we need to get to, okay? So I'm going to ask us, how do you feel life is short? How is it elusive and how is it repetitive? All right? So let's read chapter 1 together. Maybe here, can we just read this out loud, all in together, in unison, all right? Here we go. Words of the preacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes, and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises, and the sun goes down, and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south, and goes around to the north, and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. All things are full of weariness, a man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been done is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things, yet to be among those who come after. Great. So that's the first half of chapter 1. And I think you probably heard the key word right at the beginning, which is vanity. That's how most Bibles translate it. The Hebrew word is hevel. So yeah, vanity of vanity, says the preacher or the Dismantler, all is vanity. I think it should not be rendered meaningless. That's how some Bibles render it. Because later on in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, the Dismantler will say, better is a handful of quietness than 2 hands full of toil. Right? So if one thing, if the Dismantler is admitting one thing is better than another, then it means that, things have value. Not everything is meaningless. So this is not a nihilist, right? Where there's absolutely no point, no purpose, nothing, right? Again, he will come to a point where he constructs something of value by the end. So I think the better translation than meaningless is breeze or breath or even vapor, right? So Psalm 144 uses the same word, hevel. Lord, what are human beings that you care for them, mere mortals that you think of them? they are like a hevel, or they are like a breath or a vapor. Their days are like a fleeting shadow. Okay, so just I'm a visual person. Just to give you some visuals. You know, these are the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. So you know, like often you get, you know, what looks like smoke. You get the morning fog, but it burns off by like 10 or 11 a.m. Right, the sun hits it and it dissipates. And so it's that sort of thing. It's like there's this beautiful fog in the morning, but it just after a few hours it's just gone, right? There's like, you know, a kid blowing out birthday candles. You know, the candles get blown out. The smoke is there, and it kind of wafts through the room, and then the smoke is gone. That's also hevel. Or of course, you know, sort of the visual sandcastles on the sea. They're there, but they're not going to be there for very long, right? That's the sense of hevel. That life is, again, not meaningless, all is meaningless. It's like hevel. And it's very difficult to render or translate. But those visuals, hopefully just kind of have those in your head as we go through chapter 1 again and talk about what this Mantler is saying. Okay? So life is short. That is clear in chapter 1. So a generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. This is my phone. It's my bag, but that's my screensaver on my phone. That's Quandary Peak in Colorado that I hiked a few years ago, and that's the sunrise going up over Quandary Peak. And I love hiking whenever I get a chance, because it just reminds me of the beauty of how God has created the earth. But I'm bringing this up in terms of life is short, because when I see this on my phone or when I was actually there, it reminds me that this beautiful sunrise, it was there that day, but it's going to be there tomorrow, and it's going to be there in 100 years or 500 years, as long as Jesus doesn't come back. But I won't be here. Right, I'm a fruit fly compared to this beautiful picture. I'm a hevel. I'm a little breath that's here for a little while and then disappears. Generations come and go, but the earth, these beautiful sunrises, the mountains, the beauty that God has created around us, it's here much longer than you and me. Right, life is short. If we lived, there's a psalm that talks about how we live to be about 70 or 80 years old. That's the best that we can hope for. And, that's about 670 million breaths. But the idea of life is short is, we take about 25,000 breaths every day. And none of us know how long we're going to live, but if we live to be 70 or 80 years old, that's what we can expect. But every day we have to give up 25,000 breaths. It's like life is short. We only have so many breaths. For those of us who are a little older in this room, we don't need to be told life is short. We know it. We believe it. Right? Younger people, even you know it if you just think about some of the things that you might say. Like if you're with like a really dear friend or family members and you say, "Oh, the time went so quickly." Right? I just wish we didn't have to say goodbye. Or, I can't believe I'm 28 years old. I still feel like I'm 21. I remember saying that a long time ago, right? Like, there are these things that we say that indicate this relentless, unstoppable march of time that we cannot stop. And it emphasizes that life is short for us all. Okay, so that's the first, one of the first things that this Mantler is pressing us on, to realize that life is short. How have some of you experienced that? Remember, I said I would stop sort of at each point and just say, like, okay, has this been your human experience, and if so, how has that been your experience? Any examples that come to mind? Maybe one or two.
It's not me getting older, it's my niece and nephew, right? It's like, wait, how did they get to be that age?
Right. How'd they grow so quickly?
Yes, they were just a baby yesterday.
Yeah. It's a great example.
accomplished a lot in life, it still needs to be accomplished. But thinking, maybe I have 20 years left to do that, maybe I have 25 years left to do that, that's not a long time to, you know, and are those 20 like the vibrant, healthy years, or maybe 20 years from sucking and weaker and weaker,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, we go to bed at the end of the day and we say, okay, well, I didn't get that done or this done. And then, you know, when we slow down enough, or when we think about like, well, yeah, what about my life? Like, will I experience this or do this? We just realize, again, we're just so limited in time. There's just all these ways that we feel every day that life is short. Okay? And the Dismantlers remind us of that. Those are good examples. Life is elusive. A little different, but all streams run into the sea, but the sea is never full. To the place where streams flow, they flow again. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, or the ear filled with hearing. Right, so like you've got this kid running a science experiment, and right, like that vapor is in there, right? And you're trying to hold on to that kid is trying to hold on to that vapor, but you know the vapor is going to just go through his fingers, and it will be gone pretty soon. Right? So the sense of life is elusive, is we try to hold on to things. But everything is temporary. The stuff that we're holding on to, it eventually slips through our fingers. And then we have to look for something else to hold on to. It's in that sense that life is elusive. Okay? So some examples, right? It's like you look at a beautiful, fall scene, like in New Jersey or Vermont or wherever, and your eye sees the beauty, and you're like, that is just stunningly beautiful, and you're just taking it in. But then, at the end of that, whenever you leave that scene, it's not like we ever say to ourselves, oh, I am fully satisfied. I have seen beauty, and I never have to see it again, right? We sort of move on from that scene, and we're like, we're going to find the next thing, right? Or we hear a beautiful symphony, and it's like, we never say, like, oh, my ear is fully satisfied. I never have to hear a beautiful piece of music again. We never come to that point. Or the same thing with like laughing. Like if we're laughing with a friend, or we just enjoy just a moment of levity, we never say, oh, that was so encouraging. I've been so picked up. I don't really ever need to laugh again, right? We just know that the sea, it just never fills. We're just constantly looking to be refilled in all of these ways. Life is elusive in that way, right? We have that vapor, and then it just slips through our fingers, and then we have to go find something else. I don't know if any of you have seen this is Michael Jordan. There's a documentary called The Last Dance about his time playing in the NBA with the Chicago Bulls right here. This is holding one of the 6 championships. So he was like MVP like 6 times. He was an NBA champion 6 times, right? And the documentary it's really interesting. It's a lot about basketball. It's a lot about him. But this is Michael Jordan later in life, after he won his 6 MVPs and 6 championships. And there's a sense as when you're watching this, that this is a person who accomplished like sort of the unimaginable stuff of life. Mm-hmm. But as he's sitting in his multi-million-dollar apartment giving his interview, there's a sense of dissatisfaction, a restlessness, of like, even though he's accomplished so much, he's trying to figure out the next thing, and where to find meaning and purpose in the next step, right? It's like life is elusive. It's like here he's satisfied, but I don't know how long this lasted. Maybe a week, a month, a year. But it can't last. It slips through your fingers. Life is elusive. What lasts longer, our satisfaction or green bananas before brown? Right. So I'm definitely putting my money on the 1 week of ripening for the green banana to the brown. Right. That will last longer than our hearts are satisfied. Life is elusive, and that's our experience. So how have you all experienced sort of that elusiveness of life and meaning and purpose? How has it sort of slipped through your fingers? Even small examples.
Well, you clean the bathroom, and as soon as the cleaning is dirty, that's everybody's reality, right?
Everyone can relate to that one, right?
It does say wearisome in verse 8. All things are wearisome, like in a bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, for the people who like graduating college, I mean, 4 years, you think it's forever, but
Yeah,
it comes and now you're graduating and go find a job.
yeah, yeah. Or if you've ever gotten a job and you're like, this is my dream job, you know? I mean, how long does it take to have your dream job before you realize it's just a job, you know? I mean, it still might be a great job, but there are difficult aspects to it. There are things that slip through your fingers. Yeah, Fitzroy, were you gonna say
I was
something?
just gonna say, you know, not on a personal basis, but, you know, I liked Churchill of World War II, and he was quoted as saying at the end of his life that he's just bored with it all. After the great leadership that he provided in World War II, I mean, he had his own issues as well, but to do something like that, and then towards the end of his life, it's all just like, and
Yeah.
I missed what he said at the end of his life.
no, he said, you know, I'm bored with it all.
Yeah,
Scary, right?
Yeah.
yeah. Finally, life is repetitive. I think, Carolyn, this is a good transition, right? The sun rises, the sun goes down, the bathroom gets dirty, the bathroom needs to be cleaned, and it hastens to the place where it sets, right? You know, what has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There's a sense of like, well, here, I'm gonna give you visuals again, right? What do we got? We got what? The hamster on the wheel, right? You know, somebody walking on a treadmill, and anybody know what the far right is?
Rolling it,
Sisyphus.
Yeah, Sisyphus rolling the stone up the hill or the mountain, and then only to, like, the next morning it's down and just do the
Yeah.
same thing over and over, right? And we get that, yeah. I mean, Carolyn, that was a great example, right? There's a sense in which life is so repetitive. We're in a rut in so many different things and so many different ways, and there's no getting out of it. There's no escaping. You
That
know,
looks
you
good,
have to
that
go to
looks
the.
good.
I'm gonna get to. I have another parable to share with you, just to like show you how repetitive life can be. I'll get there in a second. But yeah, like you have to go to the grocery store every week, or if you don't like going to the grocery store, you have to sit down at the computer and you have to order your groceries to be delivered to you every week. Like you can't. There's no escaping the repetitive nature of life.
Bills.
You know, we are fed and we're fed, but we're never permanently filled. We rest and we rest, but there's you know, we have to go to bed again the next day. We work and we work, and there's always work to be done. You know, this world is never going to come to a point where it's like, hey, everybody stop. Everybody's worked enough. We're done. You know, it's like there's a sense of no, there's always work to be done. So just as the sun rises every day, and then sets only to rise again, we are in the same repetitive, like inescapable hamster wheel. So we think we might be able to escape. I think there's part of us that says, okay, I gotta escape this repetitive nature of life. I gotta find something to get out of this, even if it's just temporary. So here's my parable. If I could send you to like an all expenses paid vacation to like sit on this hammock for a week to escape the sort of repetitive nature of life, you'd be like, yeah, sign me up, Chris, especially if you're paying for it. Okay. But what would happen if you were in this hammock for 10 years?
You'd be bored.
10 days.
You wouldn't be happy.
It's had to
Right. So it's like, well,
Let you try it.
Okay.
Fitzroy saying like, at least give me a chance for 10 years. Let me try it and I'll get back to you, Chris. It's like, so here's my point, right? It's like we think like, okay, if I can just have leisure, if I can just have comfort, if I can just have this or that, I will escape the repetitive nature of life. And the reality is you can't. Like even comfort and leisure, it becomes repetitive after a certain period of
But
time.
you could take a repetitiveness of life and still find joy in it.
Yeah, yeah, and this is where the dismantler is trying to push us.
Right.
But right now, he's trying to expose. Do you see, like the way that this world is, that the stuff of this world, the reality of this world? Life is short, life is elusive, life is repetitive, and we're chasing all this stuff, but we're not even sort of asking these types of questions. And so he's trying to get us to see that. But yes, that's hopefully we get to push to the point where we see like, We can have joy in changing diapers 5 times a day for somebody that we love. You know, there can be joy there. It's repetitive, but there can be joy. Yeah, that's a great point, Ray. So, yeah, so where is this taking us? Where is the dismantler trying to push us? And we're now skipping to the end. So if you read the whole book of Ecclesiastes, it is very disillusioning for the first 12 chapters. It's this kind of thing over and over. But again, remember, there's a point. So we're going to the point. The dismantler says at the end, the words of the wise are like goads. They're collected sayings like firmly embedded nails given by one shepherd. And this is a goad. Does anybody know what a goad is?
No.
Yeah, it's basically a tool to goad or to push or to coerce animals to go where they're supposed to go. So like cows or sheep or whatever, right? So it's not pleasant, right? And so as you read through the book of Ecclesiastes, you get hit with this like dozens and dozens of times. I mean, we've been hit with it a few times today, right? But the point is that a good shepherd is trying to move the animal to a certain place, right? Even if it is a little painful to get there. And this is something that it doesn't feel great, but it is very effective. And this is what the dismantler is up to. He's trying to pop all of our bubbles of how we perceive reality. He's hoping to get us to not just simply strive after all this stuff that we strive after all the time, and maybe just see like, okay, well, why are we doing that? Because this is the way the world really is, if you stop to think about it. He's trying to get us to realize these things. He's trying to push us closer to God, but it's in a very different way than a lot of the rest of Scripture. He's doing it not by showing us, like a lot of times when we come to the New Testament, you know, it's like, here's who God is. Here's how he's been faithful. Here's what he's done for us in Jesus. Do you see the beauty, the sacrifice, the love, and just step into that joy, be humbled by it, and have confidence in what God has done for you, right? That's often how this is sort of the other side of like, do you see the reality of this world? Do you see that we often don't make sense of it? But now I'm trying to help you make sense of it. And as you make sense of reality and sort of the vapor of it, the hevel of it, it starts to goad you, it starts to push you to the God who is beyond sort of just this world and is the creator of this world. It's trying to push you to God in a different direction. So you and I, we inhabit a world that is short, elusive, and repetitive. And so what are our priorities in this world? How are we living this life? Where are we deriving meaning? Where are we deriving our purpose? Right? And so the dismantler says at the end, now all has been heard. Here is actually, you know what? It's just, in my interpretation of it, this is not the dismantler. This is somebody taking notes of the dismantler's lecture. But I mean, that's up for debate, right? But this is the conclusion of the book, whether it's the dismantler speaking or somebody listening to the dismantler coming up with their own sort of conclusion. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God, keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. So that's eventually where we are goaded to, when you get to the end of the book, and there's the spoiler. But it's just an unusual path to get there. So I would encourage you, if you have the stamina, and you're able to sort of have the thick skin to be goaded for 12 chapters, to read the book, knowing, okay, this is where the dismantler is pushing me for a good reason, right? It's not just tearing things down because it's fun to tear stuff down. It's tearing stuff down with the hope of building something better in its place, and this is the thing that the dismantler is trying to build in its place. So that we start to ask the question of like, okay, as I chase this thing, am I mindful that I'm living before God and living for God? So Any final thoughts or questions? 'Cause we have like 5 minutes.
So,
Yeah.
you know, it's interesting. First, I grew up in Jamaica, and I think somewhere around 15, I remember the deacon in the Baptist church getting up and talking about this, about Ecclesiastes to, I don't think it was a teenage camp or anything like that, but I was in the audience. And the message was geared towards of my age. And this is where he started.
He started with 12?
Yes,
Yeah.
he started here, and I've sort of just never forgotten that.
Yeah.
I've read Ecclesiastes multiple times, it's depressing at times and so forth, but
It's hard.
I never forgot that. So I'm only saying that to say, I look around us right now, and I see we are of a certain age.
Mhm.
How much courage do we have to have that conversation with a 15-year-old or a 14-year-old? Because we have been through the wars. Probably a lot more wars to come, but we've been through a few of them. And to sort of set the stage as a young Christian, 14, 15, 16, to sort of say, here is a big story.
Yeah.
Should we be starting there? I mean, maybe it's being done, I'm just saying, but I think they also need to hear that story,
Yeah.
I think.
It's good.
Yeah. Yeah. I know when I was 17, I thought I knew the meaning of life.
Of course.
I had it all figured out. That's right.
I did too.
Yeah. So I didn't need to hear this, you know. But as I get older, I realize no, I do not have it all figured out. And there's something that's, even though it's very disillusioning to read these words, right? There's something that just resonates as true. It could be because I feel like it accords with human experience. You know, we live this every day. Yeah, and the book would be really depressing if it didn't have this,
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
because it would just end with no hope.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Any other thoughts or questions?
Well, also it says in verse 1 of that chapter, remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth. So
Yeah.
that's very fits in with what you said there
Right.
about young people.
Yeah.
Also, I was thinking there with verse 14, saying of Jordan Peterson, you never get away with anything.
Right, right. So your great-great-grandfather, the 500-year, you know, who was a scoundrel 500 years ago, my little thought experiment, right? It's no. Under the sun, which is a phrase that's repeated multiple times in Ecclesiastes, like the reality of this world, when you're just looking at this world, no, there are a lot of people who lived, you know, lives and should have been brought to judgment in some way or other, but just they got away with it, and there's no account from this world. They escaped the accounting, right? But verse 14 says no. When you see God as creator, as judge, as redeemer and savior, no, there will be an account.
But I think Jordan Peterson was saying that on this earth, I mean, we don't know what goes on in people's hearts. Because he was a counselor, right? That he was.
Yeah.
Dealt with people's, in their struggles, and he just saw people that they thought they were getting away with things.
Oh.
But they never, in the end, he could see from talking, they didn't get away with it.
Oh, sort of just living with that guilt, that weight, that burden. I see what you're saying, or I see what you're saying, yeah. Yeah. And the Bible has a lot to say about that, for sure. Absolutely, yeah.
I thought it was interesting that it mentions that God would judge all things that were good as well. Like we've been focusing more on people getting away with things, but
Right.
that God will acknowledge and see the good things you do as well.
Right, yeah.
Because you may feel like it'll never be acknowledged. But
Right, there's a haunting, it's chapter 9, there's a haunting little parable that the dismantler gives. It's like, there was this town that needed rescue, and there was this older, righteous, wise person who stepped up and rescued this town and did this great thing. But years later, the town forgot about sort of the act of this person, right? It's like, even the good things that we do, that maybe we get a reward now, maybe we don't. Maybe it's recognized, maybe it's not. But God sees it, you know, and so, yeah, to sort of lift our eyes beyond the stuff of just this world and to live in light of the Creator, right? So, yeah, no, that's good. That's a great point. Okay, well, let me pray. Lord, thank you for this time, and we do thank you for these words. Unique, challenging, but I pray that as these are your words, spoken through your servant, I pray that that these seeds would bear a lot of fruit in our life. And I pray ultimately, just as this book says, I pray that ultimately that this would move us, push us, goad us toward you and toward a deeper faith and trust in you as you change and transform our perspectives and our priorities and just how we're living our life. I pray that you would strengthen us in these ways. Just thank you that we can do this in community together. I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Chris, that was really good.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
Ecclesiastes is very sobering.